In the floating city of Aurelia, towers touched the clouds and streets glowed with soft light. The rich walked above the sky, far from the dirt of the ground. And in the highest tower, inside a quiet silver room, sat a girl in a glass chair. Her name was Zyra. She was 12 years old. She had golden eyes, soft green skin, and silver hair that flowed like water. But her body did not move. Not since the accident 3 years ago. Her mother, Lady Valari, was one of the richest women on the planet. She owned factories, ships, and even her own moon base. But all the money in the galaxy could not fix her daughter. Zyra was paralyzed. From the neck down, doctors came and went. Machines hummed and scanned. Some gave her hope. Most gave her pain. But none gave her movement. Zyra never cried. She just watched from the window every day. She watched birds fly, children play, and workers come and go, sometimes. She blinked twice to tell her nurse she wanted music. Sometimes she blinked once to say no. One cloudy afternoon, as rain tapped gently on the glass, Zyra saw something strange. Down by the service entrance, where trash was thrown, stood a human. Boy, he looked poor, maybe 16, with torn gloves and dirt on his face. He held a broken metal plate in one hand and a spark tool in the other. "Who is that?" Zyra asked, her voice like a whisper. The nurse looked and frowned. "No one important, just a street rat," she said, closing the curtain. But Zyra blinked fast. Again and again, she wanted to see him. There was something different about him. Something alive down below. The boy worked near the trash. He wasn't begging. He was fixing a power box with scraps he found in the dumpster. His fingers moved fast. Sparks flew, and soon lights blinked back on in the loading bay. The guards came to chase him away, but before they could reach, Zyra pressed the chair's emergency chime with her nose. It was the only thing she could control. The nurse ran in. "What is it?" she asked, confused. Zyra blinked twice, then turned her eyes. Toward the window, Valari arrived moments later, her long black coat trailing behind her like smoke. "What is going on?" she demanded. The nurse explained. Zyra's eyes kept going back to the window. Valari opened the curtain and looked down. She saw the human boy fixing the wires. The guards were about to grab him. But Valari raised her hand. "Stop," she said. "Bring him up." The guards looked shocked, but they obeyed. Soon, the boy stood in the corner of Zyra's room. He looked nervous, wet from the rain. Valari stared at him, her eyes cold. "Why are you here?" she asked. "I fix things," the boy said. "My name's Yolan. You have no ID," she said. "No permission." "I just saw a broken wire," he said. "So I fixed it." He looked at Zyra. Her eyes met his, and something passed between them. Not fear, not pity, just understanding. Valari was about to dismiss him when Zyra did something she hadn't done in 3 years. Her finger twitched. The nurse gasped. Valari froze. "Did you see that?" she whispered. Yolan stepped closer. "Do you mind?" he asked. Valari nodded slowly. Yolan crouched beside Zyra and gently touched the back of her hand. "You're not broken," he said softly. "You're just waiting for the right signal." Zyra's other finger moved. Tears filled Valari's eyes, but she quickly wiped them away. The nurse called the medical scanners. The machines blinked and beeped in confusion. No one understood, but Zyra smiled. Just a small smile. Yolan stood back. "I used to fix Earth machines," he said. "Some old bodies work just the same." Valari stared at him, unsure. Was this real? Was this luck? Was it false hope again? But Zyra's lips moved just barely. She whispered a word, slow and broken. "More?" Valari turned to Yolan. "You will stay," she said. "You will try." Yolan nodded. And the glass chair glowed in the dim light. For the first time in years, hope was alive inside that silver room. Lady Valari was not a woman who trusted easily. She had built her empire with cold hands and a sharp mind. She had crushed her enemies, bought entire cities, and walked through war zones without blinking. But now, she stood in silence, watching a human boy touch her daughter's hand like it was something sacred. Zyra, the paralyzed girl who hadn't moved in years, had smiled, and not just with her lips, but with her eyes. Her whole face lit up. Valari didn't know what to see. Feel, the nurse stood frozen, clutching the wall for balance. Even the silent medical droid paused its scan and blinked red lights in confusion. Zyra's fingers had moved again, and now her wrist twitched slightly as if responding to the boy's voice. "Who are you really?" Valari asked Yalon, her tone sharp like ice. "Just a junk fixer from Sector 12. He said, wiping his hands on his torn sleeve. "I fix broken things. You are not a doctor," she said. "I don't need to be one," he replied. "Machines don't care what title you wear. They only care if you understand." Valari narrowed her eyes. "You shouldn't be in this tower," she said. "This is a restricted zone." Yalon gave a small smile. "Yeah, but your lower service gate had a broken security node. I fixed that too." Valari raised an eyebrow. "Are you trying to impress me?" "No," he said, looking at Zyra again. "I'm trying to help her." Zyra blinked once slowly. Then again, her gaze never left Yalon. He knelt beside her again, and this time, he pulled a small metal chip from his pocket. It was an old Earth neural patch, rusted at the corners, but still blinking faintly. "Don't," the nurse said, stepping forward. But Valari lifted her hand, stopping her. "Let him try," she whispered. Yalon placed the patch gently on the back of Zyra's neck, just below her hairline. A soft hum filled the air. Zyra's eyes widened, her lips parted slightly. "I used this on an old mining exosuit once," Yalon said. "The nerves inside those suits worked like real ones. They remembered how to move if you sent the right signals." "She is not a suit," Valari snapped. "No," Yalon said calmly. "She's stronger than it happens." Yara's arm jerked. Not much, but enough to make the glass chair shift slightly. Valari gasped, one hand over her mouth. Zyra turned her head, slow and shaky, and looked straight into her mother's eyes. Tears filled Valari's eyes, but she forced herself not to cry. Not yet. She looked at Yalon, this strange human boy who had come from trash piles and alleyways. "How are you doing this?" she asked. "I don't know," he said truthfully. "I just..." "Listen." The nurse backed away slowly, whispering into her coms. She was calling the Security Council. It wasn't allowed for an unregistered human to touch a high-class patient, especially not one from a ruling family. A loud ding echoed from the hallway. The doors slid open, and 3 security bots rolled in, weapons armed. "Step away from the patient," one said in a deep, mechanical voice. Valari stepped between them. "No," she said. "He stays, but protocol." "Said," she snapped. "He stays." The bots hesitated, then powered down their weapons. Yalon looked shocked. Valari turned to him, her eyes softer now. "You have 1 hour," she said. "Show me what you can do." Yalon nodded and pulled out another small device, an old Earth scanner, patched together with copper wires and alien crystal tips. He waved it gently over Zyra's spine. The screen showed tangled nerve signals, misfiring patterns, lost energy pathways. "She doesn't need replacement parts," he said quietly. "She needs a signal map reset, like a reboot." Valari didn't understand half of what he said, but she understood the result. Her daughter was moving. Even a little. It was a miracle. The hour passed quickly. By the end of it, Zyra had moved her fingers again, flexed her wrist, and turned her head side to side. Yalon didn't stop smiling. Valari didn't stop watching. And Zyra? She whispered again, this time louder. "Thank you." Security Council officers were waiting outside the room. The nurse had filed a full report. If Valari let Yalan stay, it could cause scandal legal issues, public backlash, even lawsuits. But when the officers asked, Valari simply said, "He is under my protection." And just like that, Human Boy from the trash zone became part of the richest tower in the sky. All because a girl in a glass chair had smiled and moved. Yalan sat on the floor of Zira's room, surrounded by wires, tools, and blinking scraps of old machines. He looked out of place under the glowing ceiling, with his dirty boots and patched-up coat. But Zira didn't care. She watched him with shining eyes. Her head now able to move just a little more than before. Lady Valari stood quietly in the corner, arms crossed. She had allowed him to stay, but only under strict conditions. One wrong move, and he'd be thrown out. But deep down, even she could not ignore what she had seen. Zira's fingers now moved easily. She could turn her head halfway and even move her lips into a smile. No alien doctor had managed that in 3 years. But this boy, this strange human, was doing the impossible with junk and hope. "How are you doing it?" Valari asked one morning. Yalan looked up from the circuit board he was soldering. "It's not magic," he said. "She's not broken, just blocked." He pointed at the digital chart he had drawn on the wall. Lines, signals, nerve paths drawn in chalk and wire. "Her nervous system is like a highway," he explained. "Something crashed. And now the signals don't know where to go." Valari raised a brow, but the machines we used showed nothing. Yalan smiled. "Machines don't listen. They just scan." I listened that night. Yalan worked while Zira slept. He built a strange device from an old Earth toy, a broken data core, and a heat sensor chip. He wrapped it in soft cloth and placed it behind Zira's neck. The lights blinked red, then green, then gold. A pulse traveled down her spine. Zira twitched in her sleep. Her foot jerked. Yalan saw it. His heart raced. He scribbled notes in a torn notebook, half Earth language, half alien math. Then he sat back, tired but smiling. Morning came, and Zira woke slowly. She blinked at him and tried to speak. Her lips moved, and a sound came out soft, weak but clear. "Yeah." Len Valari was called at once. She rushed in and froze at the doorway. Her daughter was speaking. Her daughter had said a name. Valari knelt beside her, her voice shaking. "Say it again." Zira blinked and whispered Yalan. Tears rolled down Valari's cheeks before she could stop them. She grabbed Jalen's shoulder and whispered, "Don't stop." The medical team reviewed the scans, but they were confused. Nothing made sense on paper, but the results were their Zira's. Muscles were slowly waking behind the hospital tower. The wind blew through metal walkways and rusted vents. This was where Yalan had found most of his parts. Forgotten tech, discarded by the rich, buried under dust and time. But to him, it was gold, each day. He added something new. A nerve stimulator made from an old hover disk. A speech amplifier crafted from an Earth's music chip. A cooling system built from a broken tea maker. Zira loved watching him work. Her laughter came more often now, soft and sweet. He even showed her how to blink in patterns to talk faster. 1 blink for yes, 2 for no, 3 for I'm hungry. Zira blinked 3 times and smiled. Valari started visiting more often. She stopped bringing her datapads. She just sat and watched her daughter move, each tiny motion a miracle. Sometimes she reached out and touched Zira's hair. "Don't stop fighting," she would whisper. "I'm here now." Yalan noticed something else. Zira's body wasn't just healing, it was learning. She responded faster with every new pulse. Her mind was strong, her spirit stronger. One evening, as rain fell softly outside, Zira moved her arm completely. She raised it off the chair, shaking but full of life. Everyone in the room froze. Valari dropped her cup. The nurse covered her mouth. Yalan simply said, "She's coming back." News of the progress began to leak. One of the nurses told a friend, who told a cousin, who told a reporter. Soon, rumors spread about a paralyzed girl who was learning to move again. And the strange human boy behind the miracle, Valari, was angry at first. She didn't want cameras or reporters near her daughter. But deep down, part of her was proud. For the first time in years, she wasn't just a rich woman. She was a mother with hope. Yalan stood on the balcony that night, looking up at the stars. He didn't care about the fame, the whispers, the money. He only cared about Zyra, the girl in the glass chair who had smiled at him when no one else did. And far above, the stars twinkled back, as if watching, waiting, and cheering for the girl, who had been forgotten, but who now was slowly learning to stand. Asterisk in the tall tower of the medical board. The Council of Care gathered in silence. They wore robes made of white silk and silver bands around their heads. These were the top minds of Aurelia's medical world: doctors, lawmakers, and scientists, and they were angry. Unregistered human, one said, slamming a file down on the table. He's not trained. Not certified, said another. He used scavenged parts from garbage. A third added, it's unsafe. Lady Valari sat at the end of the long table, calm but cold. She didn't speak at first. She waited as the council shouted, accused, warned. Then she slowly stood. My daughter moved, she said, her voice firm. She spoke. The room quieted. Valari walked slowly to the center. For 3 years, she continued. You promised results, charged me millions, and delivered nothing. One human boy with no degree did more in 1 week than all of you combined. That's not the point, the head counselor replied. Protocols exist for a reason. If something goes wrong, the blame falls on us. Valari's eyes narrowed. If you're afraid of blame, then step aside. I'll take full responsibility. Silence again. But the council was not ready to lose control. One of them brought up old laws. That banned primitive treatment from non-accredited sources. Yolan could be arrested, charged, even exiled. I won't allow that, Valari said. Then we'll remove your daughter from private care. The counselor threatened. She is still under state medical protection. Valari stared him down. Touch her, and I will bury this board under lawsuits so deep your children will need maps to find daylight. The threat hung in the air. Like thunder, no one replied. The council had power, but Lady Valari had more. Meanwhile, in Zyra's room, Yolan worked quietly. He didn't know about the meeting. Gosh, he only cared about Zyra. She was smiling more, blinking faster, lifting her arms a few inches higher every day. He had added a soft strap system to help support her shoulders. It wasn't pretty, just some cloth and wires, but it worked. Zyra was now able to sit up straighter without the chair's support. You're amazing, he whispered. Zyra blinked once, then said slowly, you help me. Yalan smiled, but his heart was heavy. He knew people were watching him. He felt it in the hallways, the glances, the whispers, the cold stares from doctors in gold coats. That evening, Valari returned. Her face was calm, but her eyes held fire. They want you gone, she said, sitting beside him. They say you're a danger. Yulan lowered his head. I'm sorry, he said. I didn't mean to cause trouble. Valari shook her head. No, she said. You gave my daughter something they couldn't hope. Man, I don't care what they say. Zyra, lying in her glass chair, looked between them. She tried to speak, but only air came out. Then she blinked twice, hard. Her mother turned to her. What is it, sweetheart? Zyra's hand trembled, lifted slightly, then pointed to Yolan, then to her own heart, and then to her lips. Valari, understood. You want to talk? Yolan picked up the old voice amplifier device he had made. It was small and scratched, but when he placed it on Zyra's throat, something changed. A soft hum filled the air. Zyra opened her mouth, and this time, her voice came out clear. Not strong, but real. Don't send him away. Valari's eyes filled with tears. Even Yalin looked stunned. Zyra had spoken a full sentence without blinking or whispering. She had found her voice again. The next day, the Council of Care received a private message. It was short. Only 6 words she spoke, and you did not. Signed, Lady Velara. Public pressure started to build. Social net feeds showed blurry photos of Zyra's hand moving, her smile returning. And Yalin fixing wires beside her. People began asking questions. Why had the system failed her? Why had only a human outsider been able to help? The council tried to control the story, but it was too late. A whisper had become a storm. And Zyra's name was on every screen across Varelia. Yalin stayed in her room, quiet, working, avoiding attention, but inside. He felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Purpose, not just fixing things. Fixing someone. That night, Valari brought him a sealed case. It held new tools, clean gloves, high-grade components from her personal lab. This is your lab. Now, she said, you're not just a helper, you're her engineer. Zyra, lying nearby, smiled and whispered through the voice patch, my engineer. Yalin smiled back. He didn't need medals or fame, just that smile. And the sound of her voice. The council had doubted him, but Zyra had chosen him, and that was all that mattered. It began like a quiet morning. The sky outside was soft and golden. The floating city drifted slowly above the clouds. Birds circled the towers, and sunlight touched the glass windows gently. But inside Zyra's room, something much greater was about to happen. Yalin tightened the last strap of the new support frame. It was made from recycled exosuit joints, soft foam, and a small stabilizer from an old cleaning bot. It wrapped around Zyra's chest and legs, not to lift her, but to balance her. Her muscles were weak, but they were waking. You ready? Yalin asked softly. Zyra sat quietly in her glass chair, her head tilted forward, eyes focused. Her voice came through the patch, slow but clear. Yes. Lady Valari stood behind them, silent. She had canceled all her meetings, turned off all her screens. Today was more important than contracts or credits. Today, her daughter would try to stand. Yalin placed both of Zyra's feet flat on the soft floor mat. He adjusted her knees, checked the supports again, and gently helped her lean forward. Don't push, he said. Just feel your weight. Zyra closed her eyes, breathing slowly. Her fingers gripped the side rails, her arms shaking. A quiet sound came from her throat. Then slowly, her legs moved. First the left knee, trembling like a leaf in wind, then the right. Valari covered her mouth. She couldn't speak, couldn't even breathe. Zyra's body rose, inch by inch, her back bent, her shoulders trembled. But she was standing, not lifted, not held, standing on her own legs. Yalin whispered, "You're doing it." Zyra's head wobbled slightly, and a tear slipped down her cheek. She looked at her mother, voice weak but proud. "Mom," she said, "I did it." Valari stepped forward, her high heels clicking softly against the marble floor. She knelt down in front of her daughter, something no one had seen her do in years. She reached out and held Zyra's shaking hands. "You did, Valari." Whispered, "You really did." The nurse who stood in the corner fell to her knees in shock. The medical droid recorded the moment, its lens zooming in on Zyra's feet. Still touching the floor without aid, a quiet cheer came from outside. Some staff had gathered beyond the door, watching through the glass wall. News had spread. A day was walking day. Yolan didn't move, didn't speak. He simply watched her stand, watched her take in the moment. He didn't want praise. This was her victory, not his. Zyra took one breath, then shifted her right foot forward. It dragged slightly, but it moved. Then the left followed. 2 steps. She was walking. It was clumsy, uneven, and barely balanced, but it was real. Valari cried quietly, her face, always strong and proud, now softened by joy and disbelief. She hugged her daughter gently, careful not to knock her over. "You're stronger than all of us," she whispered. Zira smiled and whispered back, "I want to run." One day Yalan stepped closer and nodded. "You will," he said, "but one step at a time." That evening, the whole floor celebrated in silence. No parties, no fireworks, just warm smiles and quiet tears. Valari gave Yolan his own guest. Room, fresh clothes, and full access to her labs. He refused the fancy meals, only asking for tools and time. Later, Zira sat in her chair, resting, her legs sore but alive. She looked at Yalan and asked, "Why did you help me?" Yalan sat on the floor, leaning against the wall. He looked up at the stars through the window. "When I was little," he said, "my sister was sick too. She couldn't walk. I tried to help, but I didn't know how. She died before I could learn." Zira listened quietly. Yalan turned to her and smiled sadly. "I couldn't save her," he said. "But maybe saving you gives her peace." Zira reached out, her hand touching his gently. "You did save me," she whispered. Outside the tower, the city continued, as always. Ships flew, machines buzzed, and people hurried about their lives. But in one room, a miracle had taken place, not with lasers or billion-credit machines, but with kindness, patience, and belief. Zira had walked, and nothing in the galaxy would ever be the same again. Asterisk. It started with a single image. A nurse took it by mistake, just trying to document progress. Zira was standing, smiling, one hand holding Jalen's arm, the other resting against the wall. She looked strong, alive, full of light. The nurse sent the image to a private chat. But nothing on the net stayed private for long. By morning, it was everywhere. Zira Valari walks thanks to human trash boy, alien millionaire's daughter. Saved by homeless human, walking miracle, or dangerous scam. People didn't believe it at first. Some thought it was a lie, a fake photo, a publicity stunt. But others remembered Zira once, the bright young girl who sang at galas, then vanished for years. Now she was walking again, and behind her was a human boy in broken boots and a second-hand coat. Valari's mansion tower became a target. Drones flew near her windows. Reporters shouted from the skywalks. Everyone wanted to know the same thing. Who is this human? And what did he do that no one else could? Inside, Zira sat in her chair again, tired but happy. Her legs ached. But it was a good pain, the kind that meant healing. Yolan stayed beside her, helping her stretch. Checking the wires on her brace system, he looked worried. "I think I caused trouble," he said. Zira gave a small laugh. "You always do," she whispered. Valari entered the room, her face tight with stress. "The media won't stop," she said. "They want interviews, access, live footage. They're offering money, sponsorships, even medical contracts." Yolan looked down. "I don't want any of that," he said. "I didn't do this for credits." "I know," Valari replied, walking closer, "but we need to control the story before others twist it." She looked at Zira. "What do you want, sweetheart?" Zira thought for a moment, then said slowly, "Tell the truth. Say what happened. Tell them." Yalan helped me, so Valari agreed. The next day, she held a press meeting from the balcony of her tower. She stood beside Zira, was standing proudly, both hands gripping a walker made by Yolan, and Yolan stood just a few steps behind. Quiet, his eyes on the floor. "My daughter," Valari began, "was paralyzed for 3 years. No medicine helped, no surgery worked. But this boy," she said, turning to Yalan, "helped her walk again." 1,000 voices shouted at once. "Who is he? Where is he from?" Is this a miracle? Is it legal? Is he for hire? Yalen didn't answer. Zyra did. She leaned forward and said into the mic, "He saved me." The world reacted fast. Millions of views, billions of shares. Interviews requested from every planet in the core systems, messages poured in mothers. With disabled children, soldiers with broken limbs. Everyone wanted help. Some were kind, but others were cruel. "You used illegal tech," one message read. "You're a danger to medicine," said another. "You're just lucky." Government agents came knocking. They asked questions, reviewed laws, examined Jalen's devices. They called him an unlicensed fixer, a biohacker even. A public risk. Valari stood in their way. "If he's illegal," she said, "then so is hope." "You didn't help my daughter," she told them. He did. But Yuan could feel the pressure. He didn't want to become a symbol or a political weapon. He just wanted peace. That night, he sat alone on the rooftop. The city lights sparkled below, endless and cold. He looked up at the stars and sighed. Maybe it was time to leave. Downstairs, Zyra couldn't sleep. She felt something strange, like part of her light was about to fade. She asked the nurse, "Where is Yolan?" The nurse didn't know, but she found Valari, and Valari found Yolan standing at the edge of the landing dock. "Bag in hand, you're leaving," she said, not asking, just knowing. Yolan nodded. "I don't belong in this world," he said. "I fixed what I came to fix." Valari looked at him for a long moment. Then she did something rare. She stepped forward and hugged him. "You belong where you're needed," she whispered, "and she still needs you." Behind her, Zyra had come, leaning on her walker. She stood tall, tears in her eyes. "Stay," she said, voice cracking. "Please." Yalan looked at her, and in that moment he knew he wasn't just the fixer. He was family now. Weeks passed. Zyra's steps grew stronger. Her legs no longer shook with every move. Her hands no longer trembled on the walker. And the braces Yalan built for her arms were now resting quietly in the corner. Unused, the girl who once sat still in a glass chair now walked the marble halls of the mansion tower every morning. Step by step, inch by inch, she had won back her body. Her voice came easier too. Words that once needed help now flowed gently. Softly but clearly, Yalan stayed by her side. He fixed her support pads, upgraded her shoes, taught her how to fall safely and rise again. But mostly, he just smiled and encouraged her. "You've got this," he'd whisper. "Every step is a victory." Lady Valari watched all of it from a distance. She no longer gave orders, only gentle smiles and quiet blessings. For the first time in years, her daughter didn't need her money, her connections, or her power. Zyra only needed belief. And she had that now. One morning, Zyra looked out the window. Beyond the floating city, the sky was clear and wide. She saw a path of soft green grass stretching over a hill, a private garden that hadn't been touched in years. She turned to Yalan and said something that made his heart skip. "I want to run." Yalan blinked. He wasn't ready for that, not yet. Her legs were healing. But running was different. It was dangerous, hard, fast, but Zyra's eyes burned. With quiet fire, she wasn't asking for permission. She was telling him her dream. That afternoon, Yalan adjusted her boots. He placed light stabilizers in the soles. Designed to absorb shock and support her knees, he added microservos in her. Belt nothing heavy, just enough to catch her if she stumbled. Then he looked at her. "Are you sure?" Zyra nodded. Valari watched from the balcony, her breath held tight in her chest. Servants and nurses stood in silence. The garden gates opened, and Zyra took her first step onto real ground. The grass felt strange beneath her feet, soft, uneven. A live Yalan walked beside her, holding no tools, no support bars, just his presence. She took another step, then another, and then she ran. It wasn't smooth, it wasn't perfect. Her arms flailed, her knees wobbled, and her balance shifted wildly. But it was real. Zira ran. Laughter poured from her lips. She ran down the hill, across the grass, wind in her silver hair. Tears streamed down her face as she ran toward the open sky. Valari dropped to her knees, crying openly, not from sadness, but from joy she never thought she'd feel again. Her daughter was flying not in ships or dreams, but with her own legs, her own will. Yalan followed slowly behind. He didn't chase. Didn't stop her. He just watched, smiling quietly. Zira reached the end of the garden and spun around, her arms wide. "I'm free," she shouted. Her voice echoed across the hills, and the wind carried it far beyond the tower walls. Reporters begged for interviews. Galactic leaders sent gifts and offers. Doctors demanded to study Jalan's methods, but Valari declined all of them. This was not for the world, she said. This was for one girl who never gave up. That night, Zira sat beside Yalan under the stars. The same stars he once looked at when he felt alone. Now they watched together, side by side. "You were going to leave," Zira whispered. Yolan nodded. "I didn't belong here," he said. "You do now." She replied, "You're my engineer." He smiled and looked at her legs, stretched out on the grass, strong and steady. "I guess my job is done," he said softly. Zira looked at him and shook her head. "No," she said. "Now. You run with me?" And so they did, under the twin moons of Varelia. The girl who once sat still, and the boy who once had no home, ran together across the starlit garden. No cameras, no reporters. Just wind and freedom. Each step was a promise. Each breath a memory. The world would talk, and the stars would listen. But only they knew the full story. The human miracle who refused to give up, and the alien girl who refused to stay broken. Together, they walked out of silence and ran into forever.